Hello everybody, I'm David Robertson from HEFESTIS, and today I will be giving a fast 5-question challenge to Jordan Schroeder, who is the COO and Managing CISO at HEFESTIS. Now Jordan, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you briefly introduce yourself to our lovely viewers?
Hi. Yes, I'm Jordan Schroeder. My security career goes back pretty far. I was hacking computers on Commodore 64 in the mid-'80s, and I've been involved with security management in many different industries across the US and Canada and the UK, including tech startups, Fortune 500s, local governments, financial services, and of course here in Scotland, working with the higher education, further education, and the public sector here in Scotland, which has been amazing. It's an amazing group of people and amazing sectors to work in.
I can totally agree with that. What I would like to ask is 5 quick short-fire questions. Hopefully they will be informative, and we will start with number 1. So Jordan, from your perspective, currently as COO and managing CISO at HEFESTIS, what is your view of what a good Chief Information Security Officer should do?
And this is a big question, and a lot of different people have tried to answer this over the years. And from my perspective, a CISO needs to be able to balance 2 things, right? You need to balance a lot of technical things. And even if the CISO isn't highly technical, they need to be able to manage all the technical things in cybersecurity and IT and the digital realm. But on the other side, you need to be able to manage all of the non-technical things, the soft skills, the relationship building, the complexities of strategy and risk. And some of those things are technical, but a lot of them are not. And being able to differentiate between these 2 things, what needs to be technical and what needs to not be technical, and balancing the needs of organizational goals, organizational strategy, along with the digital threats and the digital problems and the digital risks that are out there, which are very technical in nature, and trying to blend them together in a cohesive way is what I think is what a good CISO needs to be able to do on an ongoing basis every day.
Next question is, what are the top 3 cyber threats currently facing the higher and further education sector?
Well, in the middle of the COVID pandemic, the answers today are probably a little different than they might have been 6 months ago. But for universities and colleges, there are some really specific threats. Universities, especially universities, probably a little bit more so than colleges. Universities are massive organizations, and they're typically not resourced as well as their private sector counterparts. So there isn't all of this technology, tools, and people with skills that you might normally have. So as a result, there are a lot of threat actors out there, a lot of criminals who want to find their way in like a mouse and start eating some of the resources, computers, servers, disks, the network itself, to be used as a means of maintaining their own ends and as a launch pad for doing other criminal activities. And that's a huge risk, and that's a huge threat that universities and colleges face. The other threat that you'll run into is the fact that because you're an educational institution, because you hold a lot of information, you are a rich target. And a lot of corporate espionage, governments, other schools, other universities, other researchers want to be able to dig their way in and get at this juicy information, the information that makes you an educational institution. Other people want it. It's a value to you. It's a value to others. And on the other side of that, the third risk that I see, the third threat that I see, is the threat of account compromise. And this is huge. And we see this every single day. People want to compromise and get access to the accounts of your users on your network. And not only is it to help them become a mouse and eat their way in and create their secret little bubbles that you might never know about, or to gain access to the data. Just having access to an academic account, having that .ac.uk or having that .edu account has value, and these accounts are sold on the black market because people can get discounts, access to libraries, access to academic research that is free if you have some of these accounts. And so these are traded openly on the black market. So the ability to compromise accounts and get access to the accounts is huge and is a constant daily threat, as we see from the IT departments every single day. And these are three huge risks that are really specific, and a really specific risk to the higher and further education sectors.
No, for sure. And thank you very much for giving us that more focused HEFE perspective, because obviously the profiles between the higher education sector and, for example, finance or other areas of the public sector are completely different. How much should we be dedicated to a proactive threat hunting response versus ongoing response? And this is really looking more at being proactive rather than reactive to the threats of which we are aware, or making ourselves aware of those threats so that we can be more proactive.
This is a great question. I would say I would reframe it just a little bit, because even if you spend a lot of time in your threat hunting and being proactive, you have to have a sustainable, scalable way of responding to what you find. And often when you run across a threat that you've hunted for and you find, that response often looks like a normal incident response, as though alert has come in, or someone has raised the red flag that something's gone wrong. So those processes tend to be very, very similar. So I would say that from an organization's point of view, getting your response right and getting those processes down, those tools, that training, that is a dependency. That has to happen first. And getting some of these basics down, that's really, really, really important. And then once you have some of these basics down, you just can't stop there, right? If all you're doing is being reactive at that point, you are opening yourselves up to risk. The point of proactive threat hunting is to be able to reduce the risk, because the sooner that you find something happens, and if it takes you 6 months, and 6 months is the average before you find something, and you usually find it because you're looking for something else, or something else has gone wrong, or someone external to your organization has told you about it. As soon as something happens, the sooner that you can find it and remediate it, the smaller your risk. If you wait for 6 months or a year or a couple years, your risk is completely unbounded, and you have no clue how much that's going to hurt you in the long run. But at the same time, as for the public sector and for HEFE, you don't have a lot of resources to do that. So there is a very careful balance in the cost-benefit ratio to reducing your risks, right? But there's a cost in doing that. Having the skills to do it, having the people to do it, and the tools to do it does cost. I mean, there's a cost to that. But we want to be able to find that right balance in doing this threat hunting and reducing those risks. And then once you find it, having an appropriate response and having those processes and tools to respond, which you're going to need whether you've done the proactive threat hunting or whether or not you're being reactive. So it is a very careful balance. And that's a reason why we have threat management processes. There's a reason why we have this analysis to make that decision. And that decision might change from year to year as things change, as the organization changes, as your technology changes. This is going to require different analysis and reanalysis on a cycle, just like any normal risk management program would suggest.
Excellent. And I've got to say, comprehensive response. Thank you very much, Mr. Schroeder. Now, I do have a quick question looking forward rather than looking backwards or as things are now. There has been a great deal of change, obviously, in the way that universities and colleges are operating at the moment. And what do you see as the greatest challenge over the next couple of years to those organisations? Of course, in cybersecurity tech.
Well, cybersecurity is the result of how the organization functions, right? So yeah, there's these external threats, but those external threats are always going to be there, and they'll change their intents, they'll change their focus, but they're primarily going to be a constant on the internet. as if you're working on the internet, if you're exposed to the internet, it's like operating in a submarine. That water is just always there, always causing pressure, always trying to find a way in. So for an organization and for the public sector and HEFE, the next 2 years are going to be really interesting because every organization that I know is looking at making change. Digital transformation is a thing. Changing how we provide education and training, changing how we interact with the public and opening things up. All of these things are happening. More cloud. One of the things with the COVID-19 pandemic is it's forced everyone to start working remotely. And a lot of organizations and a lot of people are going to want to continue to do that. There was a bank in Canada that's saying that its employees, 80% of its employees, want a blended work from home, work in the office environment. So we're going to see a lot more remote working and work from home type of scenarios. And that is going to require change in the technology, in the resources, and the things that we make available, and change how an organization operates. And this is going to be a big challenge. And we're still probably going to be figuring that out in 2 years' time. How do we properly manage people's machines at home? How do we manage this perimeterless network? Because our perimeters are now obliterated because people are using the network at home. What is this going to look like? And that's a challenge that I believe we're still going to be working on in 2 years' time. How to do security awareness for remote workers. That's going to be huge. How do we get them to pay attention? It was hard before. It's impossible now. How are we going to equip people at home with the right technologies, with the right monitoring technologies and detection technologies and protection technologies? Do we start pushing security policies into people's homes? Do we want them to have a mini perimeter or a mini bubble in home? How do we communicate that? How do we enforce that? How do we detect that? Because these things are important. And these are not questions that we're going to be able to answer right away. And we're going to need to figure this out together moving forward. And that's probably the big question that we have. And on top of that, the other thing that we're going to continue to have is a skills problem. Our IT people, our security people, and our average, our non-IT, non-security staff are going to need to upskill constantly. Technology changes constantly. And we've stopped training people in some of these basic things and getting back to a learning environment, a learning culture where as we change and adapt to how people are working, what the market wants, what our people want, what the public wants and needs, as we adapt to that, we also need to adapt ourselves, our people, in a learning environment, so that not just so we can be more effective and more so we can help people and use the technology to the best advantage, but also how to do it safely, right? And how we can protect people, people's information, and protect ourselves and the organization as we do that. So skills is always going to be a big problem, and I continue to say that we need to invest more in this really basic training so that we can operate effectively, efficiently, and safely.
Right, it sounds like there may be many challenges rather than just one over these changes. And that's quite correct. It is a complete revolution that we're facing. And I've got to say, making that a positive outcome is going to be a very focused, I think, and energetic exercise over the next couple of years.
Yes.
Just in closing, Jordan, I'd just like to ask you, in a more light-hearted tone, what is your favourite thing about your job? Feel free to name names.
I love working with HEFESTIS. I love working with the higher and further education sectors and the public sector in Scotland. While working in one company in a private sector, and I worked in a major global bank as well, but all of the effects that I had and everything that I did helped the organization and the organization's customers. And yes, but it still was a very small scope. Working with HEFESTIS means I get to work with everybody, and the things that we do affects the nation of Scotland. It affects everybody in one way or another. And that type of impact and that ability to help organizations do things better at a national level is an amazing opportunity. And it's why I get up every single day, and I get up raring to go every single day, even with the frustrations, even with the typical frustrations of working with public sector education, universities. Yeah, there's all these other frustrations, but they pale in comparison to the opportunities we have to make a massive impact in this. And that's why I love my job.
And it shows. Thank you, Jordan. You have been absolutely lovely. Now,
Thanks.
ladies and gentlemen, that is it from us. So I'd like to thank you for listening in, and I hope that you've enjoyed this short 5-question challenge with Jordan Schroeder from HEFESTIS. Thank you and goodbye.